I'm Robert, 30M, and I've been divorced from my ex-wife Sarah, 29F, for about 2 years now. We have 2 kids together, a 6-year-old son, Jake, and a 4-year-old daughter, Brittany. Sarah and I met in college when we were both 19. We were young and in love, and things moved quickly. We got married right after graduation at 22. The first few years were great. We both landed good jobs, me as a software engineer and Sarah as a high school English teacher. We bought a house in the suburbs and started talking about having kids. Jake came along when we were 24, and Brittany followed 2 years later. But things started to change after Brittany was born. Sarah struggled with postpartum depression and quit her teaching job to stay home with the kids. I supported her decision, thinking it was temporary. But as months turned into years, Sarah showed no interest in returning to work. Our relationship became strained. We argued constantly about money and childcare. Sarah complained that I worked too much and didn't help enough at home. I felt frustrated that I was shouldering all the financial burden while she spent her days at yoga classes and coffee dates with friends. Looking back, I can see we were both at fault. I buried myself in work to avoid the tension at home. Sarah felt isolated and resentful. We stopped communicating and drifted apart. When Brittany was 2, Sarah told me she wanted a divorce. I was shocked but not entirely surprised. We tried counseling for a few months, but our hearts weren't in it. We finally decided to end things as amicably as possible for the kids' sake. The divorce wasn't great, but we managed to keep things civil. Sarah got primary custody, with me having the kids every other weekend and one evening during the week. This arrangement made sense at the time since Sarah was still a stay-at-home mom and I worked long hours. As part of our settlement, I agreed to pay a significant amount in child support and alimony each month. It's nearly 40% of my take-home pay. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I wanted to make sure my kids were taken care of. Sarah's lawyer argued that she had sacrificed her career to raise our children, so she deserved support while she got back on her feet. For the first year after the divorce, things seemed to be going okay. Sarah and I didn't talk much except about the kids, but that was fine with me. The kids seemed happy and well-adjusted when they were with me. Jake was doing well in school, and Brittany was her usual bubbly self. But about 6 months ago, I started noticing some odd things. Jake mentioned that they were eating a lot of frozen dinners and fast food at Sarah's house. He complained that he missed the home-cooked meals Sarah used to make. Brittany whined that her shoes were too small, but Sarah kept saying she couldn't afford new ones. This didn't make sense to me. With the amount I was paying in support, Sarah should have had plenty of money for groceries and basic necessities for the kids. I tried talking to her about it, but she brushed me off. She said the kids were exaggerating and that everything was fine. I wasn't totally convinced, but I didn't want to push it and risk messing up our co-parenting relationship. Then last month, Jake left his tablet at my house after a weekend visit. He asked me to bring it to school for him the next day. I agreed, but when I picked it up, I noticed it was unlocked. I know I shouldn't have looked, but something made me open his recent photos. What I saw left me stunned. There were dozens of pictures of Sarah and some guy I'd never seen before. They were clearly a couple, hugging, kissing, hanging out with my kids. That itself wasn't a huge deal. We're divorced, she can date. But what shocked me were all the pictures of them at fancy restaurants, on vacations, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. I scrolled back through months of photos. Trips to Hawaii, Disney World, skiing in Colorado. Designer bags, new cars. There were selfies of Sarah and this guy on a yacht, at exclusive clubs, at what looked like high-end charity events. Meanwhile, my kids were wearing too small shoes and eating microwave dinners. I was furious. I immediately called my lawyer and showed him the photos. He agreed it looked like Sarah was misusing the child support and possibly committing fraud. He advised me to gather more evidence before confronting her. Over the next few weeks, I dug deeper. I had my lawyer subpoena Sarah's bank records. What we found was even worse than I imagined. Sarah had been funneling almost all the child support money into a separate account. She was spending less than 20% of it on the kids. The rest was going to lavish vacations, shopping sprees, and gifts for her boyfriend. To make matters worse, I discovered that Sarah had actually gotten a job about 6 months after our divorce. She was working as a marketing coordinator for a local company, making a decent salary. But she never reported the income, so I was still paying alimony based on her being unemployed. Between that and the child support, she was raking in over $100,000 a year tax-free. I was livid. All this time I'd been working overtime and living in a tiny apartment to make those support payments. I'd canceled my gym membership, stopped going out with friends, even sold my car and started taking the bus to work. I thought I was sacrificing for my kids, but Sarah was using them as her personal piggy bank. The more I looked into it, the worse it got. Sarah had opened credit cards in Jake's name and maxed them out. She'd borrowed money from Brittany's college fund to pay for a luxury spa weekend. She'd even convinced my parents to loan her money for supposed medical bills for the kids, bills that never existed. My lawyer advised me to stop payments immediately and file for full custody. He said we had a strong case for fraud and misuse of child support. I agreed and we filed the paperwork last week. Sarah found out yesterday when she was served with the court documents. She showed up at my apartment screaming and crying. She said I was trying to steal her kids and ruin her life. I told her she did that to herself by stealing from our children. She begged me to reconsider, saying she'd pay it all back. I told her it was too late, I couldn't trust her anymore. She tried to guilt me by saying the kids would suffer without her. I pointed out that they were already suffering because of her selfish choices. Finally, she threatened to tell everyone I was abusive if I didn't drop the case. I laughed and told her to go ahead, I had mountains of evidence proving she was the abusive one. She stormed off, but I'm sure this is just the beginning of the fight. I know stopping support payments might hurt my kids in the short term. But I truly believe they'll be better off with me in the long run. Sarah has shown she can't be trusted to put their needs first. I've already started looking for a bigger apartment so the kids can live with me full time. I'm researching schools in my area and looking into after-school programs. It'll be an adjustment, but I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to give my kids the stable home they deserve. Part of me feels guilty for not noticing what was happening sooner. I should have pushed harder when I first noticed things seemed off with the kids. But I was trying so hard to keep the peace and not rock the boat. I thought I was being a good co-parent by staying out of Sarah's business. Now I realize I was just enabling her to take advantage of me and neglect our kids. Some friends think I'm being too harsh. They say I should give Sarah another chance or try to work things out for the kids' sake. But I just can't trust her anymore. She's shown over and over that she'll always put herself first. I won't let my kids be collateral damage in her selfish schemes anymore. So Reddit, Ida for cutting off child support and filing for full custody after discovering my ex-wife's scam? I'm confident I'm doing the right thing, but I could use some outside perspective. What would you do in my situation? Update 1. It's been about 3 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, thank you all for the supportive comments and advice. It really helped me stay strong through all of this. The day after I posted, I had a long talk with Jake and Brittany. I didn't want to badmouth their mom, but I felt they deserved some explanation for the changes that were coming. I told them that there were some problems with the money I was sending their mom, so things might be different for a while. Jake seemed to understand, and actually said he was glad because he was tired of eating frozen pizza all the time. Brittany was confused but didn't ask too many questions. A few days later, we had our first court hearing. Sarah showed up with a fancy lawyer and tried to paint me as a vindictive ex trying to punish her for moving on. She claimed I was jealous of her new relationship and trying to control her life. Her lawyer argued that Sarah had been a devoted stay-at-home mom for years and deserved ongoing support. But when my lawyer presented the financial records and photos, the judge was not impressed. The evidence of Sarah's spending was damning. Receipts for $1,000 bottles of champagne, $5,000 handbags, first-class plane tickets. All while the kids wore hand-me-downs and ate junk food. The judge ordered Sarah to provide a full accounting of how she'd spent the child support money over the past 2 years. He also froze all of Sarah's accounts pending further investigation. That's when things got really interesting. Sarah's lawyer asked for a recess, and they were gone for over an hour. When they came back, Sarah looked pale and shaken. Her lawyer asked to approach the bench, and after a whispered conversation, the judge called a halt to the proceedings. He ordered us to reconvene in 2 weeks and told Sarah to be prepared with a complete financial disclosure. I was confused, but my lawyer seemed excited. He said it looked like Sarah's lawyer had realized how bad things were and was trying to buy time to negotiate a settlement. I was skeptical. Sarah had seemed so confident before. What could have changed? I found out a few days later when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Sarah's boyfriend, Mark. He said he needed to talk to me urgently. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. Mark looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. He told me that he had no idea about Sarah's scam until recently. He thought all the trips and gifts were from her teaching salary and some family money. When he found out the truth, he was horrified. But it got worse. Mark said that Sarah had been pressuring him to marry her for months. He kept putting it off, saying he wasn't ready. Now he knew why she was so desperate. She needed to be remarried before the 2-year mark in our divorce when her alimony would decrease. The real bombshell came next. Mark said that about a year ago, Sarah had told him she was pregnant. He was excited but nervous about becoming a dad. But as months went by and Sarah didn't show, he got suspicious. He snooped in her email and found messages with a fake belly manufacturer. Sarah had been planning to fake a pregnancy to pressure him into marriage. I was stunned. I knew Sarah could be manipulative, but this was a whole new level. Mark apologized for his part in everything, even though he was a victim too. He said he had already broken up with Sarah and was planning to testify about her deceptions if the case went to trial. After Mark left, I called my lawyer and filled him in. He was thrilled. This was exactly the kind of evidence we needed to prove Sarah was unfit for custody. He said with Mark's testimony, we had a good shot at getting full custody and possibly even criminal charges against Sarah for fraud. I felt vindicated but also sad. How could the mother of my children have turned into such a monster? I wondered if there were warning signs I'd missed during our marriage. The next week was a whirlwind. My lawyer deposed Mark and gathered statements from several of Sarah's friends who had suspected something was off. We also got records from Sarah's job showing she'd been employed for over a year while collecting unemployment and alimony. 2 days before our next court date, I got a call from Sarah. She was sobbing, begging me to call off the lawyers. She said she'd sign over full custody and pay back every penny if I'd just drop the fraud charges. I told her it was too late for that, she'd made her choices and now she had to face the consequences. The day of court arrived, and I was nervous but determined. But when we got there, Sarah and her lawyer were nowhere to be found. After waiting an hour, the judge was furious and issued a bench warrant for her arrest. It's been radio silence from Sarah since then. Her apartment is cleaned out, and none of her friends know where she is. The police are looking for her, but so far no luck. I have temporary full custody of the kids now. They're confused and upset about their mom disappearing, but I'm doing my best to keep things stable for them. Jake is angry and acting out at school. Brittany keeps asking when mommy is coming home. It breaks my heart that I don't have answers for them. My parents have been a huge help, coming to stay with us and helping care for the kids. They feel terrible for believing Sarah's lies and giving her money. They're trying to make it up to the kids now with lots of love and attention. I'm still in shock about everything that's happened. I never imagined Sarah could be capable of such elaborate deceptions. I'm angry at her for stealing from our kids, but mostly I'm sad for them. They deserve so much better. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm committed to giving my kids the stable, loving home they need. I've enrolled Jake in counseling to help him process his anger. I'm looking into preschools for Brittany so she can socialize with other kids her age. Financially, things are tight without Sarah's income, but we're managing. I'm working with a financial advisor to try to recoup some of the stolen money and start rebuilding the kids' college funds. It'll take time, but I'm determined to give them the future they deserve. Thank you all again for your support through this crazy situation. I'll update again when there are new developments. Update 2. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and the saga continues. Sarah is still missing, but a lot has happened. About a week after Sarah disappeared, I got a call from her sister, Amy. Amy and I were never close, and she sided with Sarah in the divorce. So I was surprised to hear from her. She said she had just gotten back from a trip abroad and had no idea what was going on. When she couldn't reach Sarah, she started asking around and heard rumors about the court case and fraud charges. I filled Amy in on everything that had happened. She was quiet for a long time, then said there was something I needed to know. She asked if she could come over to talk in person. When Amy arrived, she looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She sat down and took a deep breath, then dropped a bombshell. Sarah and I hadn't been able to conceive naturally. Our kids were born through IVF. Or so I thought. Amy said that Sarah had confided in her years ago that she had cheated on me right before we started trying for kids. When she found out she was pregnant, she lied and said the IVF had worked. She did the same thing 2 years later with Brittany. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The kids I'd raised and loved for years might not even be mine. Amy said she had urged Sarah to tell me the truth, but Sarah always found excuses not to. Amy felt guilty for keeping the secret but didn't want to blow up our family. I was reeling. Part of me didn't want to believe it. But it explained so much, why the kids didn't really look like me, why Sarah had been so insistent on using a particular fertility clinic that was out of network for our insurance. I asked Amy if she knew who the real father was. She said Sarah had never told her, but she suspected it was Sarah's college ex-boyfriend, Chris. Apparently he and Sarah had stayed in touch over the years, and he conveniently moved to our city right around the time we started trying for kids. I thanked Amy for finally telling me the truth. She left, and I spent the next few hours alternating between rage and despair. I loved Jake and Brittany so much, how could they not be mine? But I knew I needed to find out for sure. The next day, I called my lawyer. He said that given everything else Sarah had done, paternity fraud wouldn't surprise him. He advised me to get DNA tests done right away. I agonized over how to handle it with the kids. They were already dealing with so much upheaval. Jake was old enough that he'd probably remember the test, but I hoped Brittany was young enough that she wouldn't. In the end, I told Jake that the doctor needed to do a special test to make sure we were healthy. He was scared of needles, but I promised him ice cream after if he was brave. Brittany was easier, she barely noticed when the nurse swabbed her cheek. The wait for results was agonizing. I swung between hoping they were mine and almost wishing they weren't, like it would justify all of Sarah's other lies somehow. Finally, after what felt like years, I got the call from the lab. I steeled myself for bad news. But to my shock and relief, the tests confirmed that both kids are biologically mine. I broke down crying. All the stress and fear of the past months came pouring out. My kids were mine. Sarah may have lied about everything else, but at least she hadn't taken that from me. I called Amy to let her know. She was stunned. She swore Sarah had told her she cheated. We realized Sarah's web of lies went even deeper than we thought. She had manipulated everyone around her for years. Meanwhile, the police were still searching for Sarah. They managed to trace her to Mexico, but the trail went cold there. My lawyer said that even if they find her, extradition could be complicated. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding our lives. Jake and Brittany are in therapy to deal with their mom's disappearance. I'm in therapy too, trying to process everything that's happened. I've had to explain more to the kids about why their mom left. Jake is angry and says he hates her. Brittany still cries for her sometimes. It's hard, but I'm trying to be honest with them in an age-appropriate way. I'm still angry at Sarah for all her lies and manipulation. But mostly I'm grateful that Jake and Brittany are mine and that they're safe with me now. Whatever happens with Sarah, I know we'll get through it together. Update 3, it's been 6 months since everything blew up with Sarah, and life has finally started to settle into a new normal. The biggest news is that Sarah was finally caught. She had fled to Belize and was living under an assumed name. Apparently she had blown through most of the money she stole on a lavish lifestyle there. She was arrested trying to use a fake passport to fly to Europe. The extradition process took a while, but Sarah is now back in the US and facing multiple felony charges. My lawyer says she's looking at serious prison time for the fraud, theft, and flight to avoid prosecution. I've struggled with how to handle this with the kids. They knew their mom had done something bad and run away, but I hadn't told them all the details. Now that she's back, I've had to explain more. It's been really hard on them, especially Jake, who's old enough to understand most of it. We're all still in therapy, which has been helpful. The kids are processing their anger and sadness at their mom's betrayal. I'm working through my own issues from the years of gaslighting and manipulation. Sarah's parents finally reached out to me. They had been backing her story at first, but now they realize the extent of her lies. They apologized for believing her over me and asked to be part of the kids' lives again. I'm cautiously allowing short, supervised visits for now. Financially, things are looking up. The court ordered Sarah to repay all the stolen child support and alimony. My lawyer doubts I'll ever see most of that money, but they did seize and sell her car and some expensive jewelry to start paying it back. I've been awarded full custody of the kids. Sarah will be allowed supervised visits when she gets out of prison, but she has lost all parental rights. It's sad in a way, but I know it's for the best. The kids are doing better. They're back to their normal activities and have made new friends. Brittany still asks about her mom sometimes, but less often now. Jake is angry and says he never wants to see Sarah again. I'm trying to stay neutral and let him process his feelings. As for me, I'm slowly putting my life back together. I've started dating again, very casually. It's hard to trust after everything with Sarah, but I'm working on it. My job has been understanding about all the time off for court and kids' appointments. I still have moments of anger about everything Sarah put us through. But mostly I'm grateful that the kids and I are safe, healthy, and together. Whatever the future holds, I know we can handle it. Thank you all again for your support through this crazy journey. Your advice and kind words helped more than you know.